And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Marvel Legendary Civil War. Now, Civil War is probably my favorite comic. Well, Age of Apocalypse is pretty close, but Civil War is pretty close to my favorite comic series in the Marvel Universe. There's a new Civil War 2 going on right now, but this is, as far as I can tell, this is based on the original Civil War comic. There's also other references in here to Avengers versus X-Men and some other stuff. And then there's also some popular characters like Luke Cage, although he was involved with the Civil War. So it's very reasonable to have him in here, but, you know, TV show doesn't hurt to have the character in here. So this is a big box set. A lot of the expansions from Marvel Legendary are small. There is a ton of stuff. It feels like there's more stuff in this one than any other set. It's probably not true, but it feels like there's a lot, so let's get into it. First, we'll take a look here at there's new schemes. There's actually 8 new schemes, and I like the different schemes. They're kind of very basic. I like the fact that this one has 2 different groups of heroes, so you got to be careful that you don't have them both in your hand at the same time. Here, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are coming after you. Here we got actually the epic superhero Civil War. The United States is split by Civil War. That's a very short-run comic book. Reveal heroes' secret identities. So these are all basically different things that happened in the Civil War. But let's take a look at the masterminds. We're going to start with Maria Hill, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, she doesn't seem like a mastermind, but in the Civil War, I guess kind of, sort of. But I think she's a really cool mastermind. She's not that difficult. The problem with her is she has S.H.I.E.L.D. officers that enter the city as villains. And when you fight them, you get them as heroes, so that's cool. But she has double S.H.I.E.L.D. clearance. Now, S.H.I.E.L.D. clearance is something that's going to show up in this game on different villains. And S.H.I.E.L.D. clearance essentially means you cannot defeat that person unless you have a S.H.I.E.L.D. card from your hand. And you also can't fight her while there are any S.H.I.E.L.D. elite officers in the city. And so that's kind of a difficult thing to do, and I like that it kind of shows she's kind of behind the scenes using technology. We also have Ragnarok. This is a robotic Thor, essentially, where he gets +2 for each hero class amongst the heroes in the headquarters. So he's going to fluctuate up and down. And when a Master Strike, each player says 0 or not 0, then you lose all the cards of that cost. That's more problematic at the beginning of the game when most of your cards cost 0. As time goes by, this is not one of the more difficult people. Misty is also not more difficult, although you'll say, wait a minute, she has 14. Well, yes, but you can bribe her, which means you're allowed to use money cards to attack her also. And she does a wound and stuff. But I'm glad that they're putting in, not every single new villain has to be awful. Even this guy here is 16, but he's -1 for each villain in your victory pile. So the more villains you beat, the easier he gets to take out. On the other hand, we have Authoritarian Iron Man, who we all hate. He leads the Superhuman Registration Acts, but he can fortify a city space. In this expansion, they had the new Fortify, so he'll fortify a space next to him every time there's a Master Strike, and you can't fight him while there's a villain in that space, and the villains in those space get +3. And he's a 12. So this is a very difficult, he's one of the more difficult masterminds there is, and I guess it would make sense since he is Iron Man. Now let's take a look at some of the other stuff that comes in this set. We have Grievous Wounds. You'll mix these into wounds, and when you get a Grievous Wounds, there are different ways to heal them, but they're hard. Here you can spend 5 attack if you do KO this wound. You may KO a hero that costs 1 or more from your hand or discard pile if you do KO this wound. Those are really hard to get rid of. So there's no reason that you should use these unless you want to make your game harder. There's also 2 new bystanders, a comic shopkeeper for who knows why. I mean, he has a cool ability when you rescue him, but really? And an aspiring hero. Now, when you rescue a bystander, you gain a sidekick. Now, sidekick's a new thing here. We have a deck of sidekick cards. And there's multiple ways to gain sidekicks, but the sidekicks are kind of like, well, they're just sidekicks. There's Throg and Red Wing, and these sidekick cards are like one-time use. When you get a sidekick card, you'll use it, something will happen, and then you put it on the bottom of the sidekick stack. So, for example, Ms. Line here lets you rescue a bystander, draw a card, and then you put it on the bottom of the stack. Lockjaw here has phasing. Phasing means you don't have to use it on your turn. You can exchange it with the top card of the draw pile. So there's going to be a lot of cards in this deck with phasing. And then you can use this phasing, but he also has 2 attack. We have Lockheed and Zabu and Hairball, and then there's multiples of these different sidekicks that are in the game. All right, let's take a look now at the villains. And we're going to kind of just run through the villains because villains are villains, and it's more, they have different things. Like there's the shield clearance guys where you have to have a shield person to take them out, but there's just all sorts of different villains that are going to be in the game. There's Bullseye and Moonstone and Penance and Venom. Now Venom is size changing. When a villain has size changing, they're easier to defeat if you have a card of that type. So this guy, normally it takes 7 to defeat Venom, but if you have a card with that icon on it, then he's only 5. And Big Bertha and Flatman are also size changing. They were in like, I think, 2 comics? Anyway, Mr. Immortal and Squirrel Girl, who is now, like, has her own comic now, so she's becoming more popular. There's Humbug. I think that guy hates Christmas. Tarantula, she has Bribe, so you're seeing Bribe also show up on some of these cards. Here's Deadpool and Micromax, and some of these guys are heroes also in other sets, but here they're basically just going to be villains because you're fighting them as part of the Civil War type thing. So for example here, Iron Spider, he also has that Fortify where he can fortify the deck. There's different kinds. There's another shield clearance. Oh, well, this is the shield deck, so they have shield clearance, so they're harder to kill. So those are the different villains in the game. But I think what I like to talk about most, of course, is the new heroes that come in this set. And so we'll start here with Patriot, who's kind of like a young Captain America. He's a little bit of an excitable type guy. And Patriot here, he gets +1 for each hero name, plus 1 attack, and +1 buying. But here's a cool thing. Now this is his 3rd card, and there's almost every hero in this set has these cards, which are double cards. So this is Patriot and Hawkeye. This is Hawkeye's daughter or something like that. When you play one of these cards, you get to use either side of the card. So that's really cool. The card costs 5, right? But here I can do 1 attack and possibly get an extra 3 attack, or I can just have 3 purchasing power. Each one also gives a different thing. Dual cards give you a lot of variety in the symbols that you need and stuff. They're not so cheap, but they have multiple options. He also leads the Young Avengers, so that's Patriot. Then we got Peter Parker, who is another version of Spider-Man. Peter Parker comes with a double card with Aunt May. Yay! She helps get rid of a wound. I think it's her cookies. And then, of course, the Reluctant Celebrity. Peter Parker's big card is still going to be just a 2, but it's a +1 attack for each extra card you've drawn. So this could be a really powerful card. Then we have Captain America, Secret Avenger, which is another Captain America. Here he's working with this guy, Battlestar. Here he gets a sidekick, and there he has 2 attack. And Bold Leadership and Freedom Never Dies is his big card, and it has to do with playing sidekicks. We have the Falcon, who has a double card with the Falcon. Big shocker there. Look at 3 cards of your deck, draw 1, put the rest back in any order, or gain a sidekick, which I think it would tick off Falcon if he had another sidekick, but whatever. He also has a pretty big card here where it's +1 for each card in the headquarters with an attack icon. This is pretty neat, but it's not his biggest card. It's this one here, which is if he has an Avenger card played with him, you get plus attack equal to the printed attack of a hero in the headquarters +4 more attack. That's very powerful, and I like him a lot. Hercules, who's one of my favorite characters from the comic book because he's like big, strong, slightly dumb, but he does hang out with Amadeus Cho, who's one of the smartest people in the universe, so they have a double card for that. And he's all about rescuing bystanders. In fact, his big card gives you bonus attack for how many bystanders he has. Wiccan is, let's clear these cards out here. Wiccan is a character that's using the phasing, which I mentioned. Phasing is where you are able to stick the card, replace this card with the card in the top of your deck. So you say, oh, I like this card, but it doesn't work my hand now. I'll stick it on the top of the deck to get maybe a different card this hand and save this one for the next turn. And so he also has a double card with speed. And his big card is kind of weird. You choose a number and reveal the top card of your deck. If it's at cost, draw it and draw another card. I don't know if I like this one that much. It's okay, but it's so random. You have to know the cards in your deck, and I guess I like randomness, but in this case, it has not worked for me well that many times. We also have Hulkling. Hulkling has size changing. Now, size changing for a villain made it easier to defeat them. Size changing for a hero makes it easier to buy them. Size changing here means if I use a strength card, he costs 2 less. So instead of 4, this card would cost 2. And since this is a double size changing, this card would be pretty inexpensive if I have either of those symbols. And so all Hulkling's cards have this side changing on them. And in fact, here he's 4, but he could be an 8. Goliath also has size changing. It's kind of a theme in this set. There's a lot of size changing individuals here where he's very big. His main attack here, he gets attack equal to the cost of another card you played this turn. So if you have a couple high cost cards, this could be pretty powerful, but you have to have those. Vision comes with that phasing, which we've already mentioned. And so and this double card, he's size changing and phasing. But I mean, the card itself is not that fantastic. All right, let's take a look now at my favorite characters from this set. So we have Daredevil, and Daredevil has some pretty cool cards. He has a dual card. The next hero you recruit this turn goes on the top of your deck, or I can get +1 attack for each different cost of hero you have. Which one of those is good to use? You know what? Both. This card is definitely worth 6. But I really like his super card here, the Master of Martial Arts. If I play another Avenger card, I can discard the top 2 cards of my deck. If they have different costs, I get +2 attack and then repeat this process. The chance of you having 2 different cost cards is pretty high, so you're probably going to get 6. You might get 8. This could be a huge number, Daredevil. That's really neat. Speedball is also one of my favorite characters, partially because I've always loved the character. From the New Warriors, and yes, I know he's like the catalyst for the Civil War, but I still feel for him, man. So he has a cool double card where you can draw 2 cards and stuff, but his force field here cancels Master Strikes. Yeah! Especially against a villain who has amazing Master Strikes. Yes, he's going to stop them. Then we have Tigra, who's actually a character I do not like in the comics at all, although I do like the fact here that she's punching Red She-Hulk. But her big card is pretty cool. It lets you recruit a hero from headquarters for free, and if you have another Avenger card, you can then use their attack and or you can use their buying power. Really powerful. That's a really cool card. Stature, who is a character I like, she's another another character who can become huge, so she has size changing. And here she's working along with a robot, but her size changing big card is one of my favorite in the game. Size changing, so this could be 6. But if you play this with another strength card, you defeat every villain that's 4 or less. Now that may not be a ton of villains, but it might be. So that's really cool. I really like her a lot. Luke Cage, who's going to be extremely popular. What? He's working with Jessica Jones. Anyhow, of course they had to give him a sweet Christmas card, which is great. But his Unbreakable Skin card is what I really like. He can fortify the wound stack, and while it's fortified, other players can't gain wounds. At the beginning of your next turn, put this card in your discard pile. So for 1 turn, he stops people from getting wounds. And it's a 6 attack. Come on now. Come on now. Sweet Christmas. Now we have a couple characters who almost all their cards are double card. We have Storm and Black Panther. In case you didn't know, in the comics, they were briefly married. Very happily, then the Civil War kind of broke them up. Actually, it wasn't the Civil War. It was Avengers vs. X-Men. So all their cards are double card, which is neat. And then their main card here, reveal any number of multi-class cards from your hand. That's these. And gain that many sidekicks. Yeah! And then also, we have Cloak and Dagger, who are some of my favorite characters. And again, almost all their cards are dual cards. They have phasing on these too. And their big card is when you play a divided card this turn, play both sides of it. Ha 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 ha. Now this is really good if you use not just Cloak and Dagger, but you use a couple other characters with the divided one. Then this card becomes amazing. So those are the cards in the game. So at this point, you know, with Marvel Legendary, I'm kind of like, oh, another set? Okay. I'll check out the new set. But I have to say, this is my current favorite set. After the whole Secret Wars set, which was kind of like, they're like, ooh, look at these characters that no one ever cares about or uses, or they showed up in a few comics. There's a little bit of that in this set, but no, there's like major characters in this set, and there's a lot of the newer major characters. Like, you may not know who Stature is, but she's a new major of the Young Avengers, and Tigra, and Luke Cage, and Hulkling and stuff. These are characters that are starting to grow and become bigger in the universe, and they also include some pretty big characters. Hercules had a whole Marvel thing around him recently. So these are really cool characters, but they also add some nice stuff. They brought back bribery, which is a thing I liked a lot. They have phasing, which is cool. I don't think it's like amazing, but it works and it's easy. Size changing, which I think is very neat. It's cool. It gives you that discounted cards. It's always a good thing. The shield clearance, which is a horrible thing to fight against, but it's neat. Grievous wounds if you think the game's hard, but who cares? Sidekicks, yeah, I like the sidekicks a lot. I'm glad to have those. The new villains are good. The new masterminds are good. You know what I like about the new villains and masterminds is they're not like, this is a weird, wonky thing. No, they're very straightforward, and I like that. They're very straightforward. This could be the first expansion you get. And the new heroes, I cannot say enough about the split cards. I love the split cards. I know it's not unique to this game. I know Magic the Gathering and but I loved it in Magic the Gathering, and I always was disappointed that there wasn't more of it in Magic the Gathering. The split cards is something I've always enjoyed. I think it's cool because it gives you more options. So all that in this box, if you're going to get one expansion, you could go right from original Legendary to this expansion. You know, we're at the point now where Legendary is up in the trillions of combinations. You're never going to be able to play Legendary every possible way, and really, we don't need that much Legendary. You're not going to be able to play all the combos, but they got me with this set. It's a good set. I have to recommend it. It has a lot of characters that you know or should know. It has some really cool mechanisms that are really easy to implement. It works really well together, but also you can split these cards up and use them in different sets too, which some of the other sets don't break up as easy, like the Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff. This is a solid expansion. Highly recommend it from me. Oh, and also a great storyline. If you haven't read The Civil War, I mean, the movie is not really like the book line at all. That's the best comic series. Yeah, I'll say it's better than Age of Apocalypse. It's great. Check it out. But anyway, Legendary Civil War. Dice Tower Judgment. Excellent!
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.